Can you imagine how stressful my life must be if working on a third generation Prelude is what I do to relax? Welcome to Dirt, Sweat, and Gears, where the road to hell is paved in good intentions. At least it must have been paved in good intentions, because it's definitely not paved in concrete or asphalt. We're back here with the Prelude, which for you has just been a couple of videos, but for me has felt like an eternity. Not only because I really enjoy the Prelude and I don't enjoy seeing it on a jack stand, but it's been about 2 months and I have just been spending more time waiting on parts than I have been actually fixing the car, and that is really, really, really frustrating. But now, I think we'll be able to get the front end of the car back on the ground today, which means I get to turn it around and start on the rear end. So we are still working on the suspension project that I took on. This was a revisit of the dismal failure of a project that I had done last year, where I tried to replace the control arm bushings and ended up cutting into the control arm, and I had to just put the brakes on, give up on that project, get a junkyard arm, and now we're actually doing it for real. So last video, you saw that I was able to remove the old bushings by using this really clever tool that no one really talks about when they talk about doing this job. And that tool I'm talking about, of course, is money. Now, I said it cost me about $40, 30, 40 bucks, and that turned out to be $30 to $40 per bushing, depending on what I was asking the shop to do. So he did both the control arm bushings as well as the wheel bearings. And so the prices varied depending on what he was doing, and well, it was well worth it to me because it turned out, even for him, it was kind of a pain in the ass. So we got that done. It's ready to go. However, we still need to do some work on the steering rack because I learned that my inner tie rods might be giving a little bit of play, but more importantly, the boots were torn. So we're just going to do everything that we can do so that we don't have to worry about this car for a good long time. Now, when that's done, we of course still have to do the rear of the car. So, of course, this being a four-wheel steering car means that getting the front end done means I'm really only halfway done with the job. The rear end is kind of very similar to the front end. So, I have even more of a journey ahead of me with the rear because the parts were a lot harder to find, and I am not exactly sure if I have everything I need or if I got the right things in order to do this job. And then somewhere in between getting the front end on the ground and starting on the rear, I have to do an oil change on the Miata. I'm not going to do any of that on camera just because it's boring and hopefully will be uneventful. But if there is anything worth reporting on, you bet I'm going to bring you on that journey. Let's get started. Jeez. So you can see here, I have removed the dust boot from the driver's side of the inner tie rods. And then over here, I have the new boots themselves. And let's take a quick look at them. They're from Beck Arnley as well. I was pretty happy with their ball joints, so I went and got their dust boot covers. And they're pretty much what you'd expect. Rubber. And what do they come with? Oh, I think this is one where you put it on and then you pull on this little tab with a pair of pliers or something, tighten it, and then you just squish these little tabs down. I think that's how you do it with this, but it's going to be a few minutes before I can find out because I want to replace the inner tie rod itself. And that's going to come in a few days. In the meantime, we're going to check out these radius rod bushings. So I finally received my order from Poland. Thank you, Bober Garage. I hope it's called Bober Garage. Here's their contact information if you would like some bushings for your car. These are for the radius rod bushings on both the front and rear. I believe this is one of the fronts, and just kind of looking at how it was made, this does not seem like it's simply a rebadged something else, like they took something from Prothane and put their own label on it. I think they may have made this for our car. If that's the case, that's really cool because that means someone cared enough to make these parts for this car. These people cared enough to make these parts for the car. And even their flyer has a Prelude on it. So that's really, really neat. And here it is in Polish. I think that's really cool. I think that's really cool that somebody is out there making parts for our cars. And if I had any criticism, I would say toss in a sticker that isn't attached to your bag, because I want to put one on my toolbox. So I found a home for your sticker right on my 20-ton press. It's stuck here just fine. It is right next to Treasure Coast Miata sticker, a donut sticker, and oh yeah, by the way, it's a Dirt, Sweat, and Gears sticker. So I got the front radius rod bushing removed, and let's take a look at it. So it came off, it was a little bit of a bear to wrestle out with not much more than a screwdriver, but it did come out. And you see here, I did kind of ding it a little bit, but I don't think that's really anything to worry about. These, you know, these honestly don't look bad at all. Like, I was expecting them to be all cracked or whatever, but no, they're fine. Like, I would swear that these have been replaced at some point, but I know these haven't been replaced ever. I've had this car for a very, very long time, and I've been the only one to touch radius rods in a very long time. All right, I got these all cleaned up, and I have the new bushings on the thingies. You see, I did use a little bit of grease just because I wanted everything to not squeak, but I didn't want to bother putting too much on because that's just going to collect dirt. Considering where it is on the car and because these don't really seal up like the other bushings do, I'm not really concerned beyond just not wanting them to squeak, especially considering the old ones. I mean, they squeaked really loudly, but they're not torn in any way. So hopefully these won't squeak, but they probably will. That's how these projects go. So I knew it was too good to be true. See, the other side was on there with what felt to be about 100 million foot-pounds of torque. So we're just going to soak it down with some WD-40 and let it think about what it's done overnight. Well, it's done. The passenger side radius rod bushing is installed. The nut here did require even a little more convincing than some WD-40. I actually ended up buying a 24 millimeter deep socket, which I have right over here. So there's a 24 millimeter impact deep socket. And so I got this and I attached it to my Milwaukee Fuel impact driver. And the Milwaukee impact driver, I gotta say, it doesn't care how tight your bolt is attached. It doesn't care how tight your nut is attached. It is going to break that loose. That's just how it is. You want something broken loose, you get that. That is worth every penny. I have not touched my air impact driver since I got this. This thing is amazing. All right, so we got this thing on the tripod. I'm sitting just to the left of the tripod, so hopefully I can keep this stuff in frame as opposed to my last video where half of the stuff that I was showing you was off frame. So let's open this up and take a look at it before we go removing parts, because I want to make sure that I have the right part, and I want to make sure that I remove what I'm supposed to remove and all of that good stuff. So we've got a washer thing here. We've got another thing. I have no idea what these are yet. But here is the ball joint. You can't move it by hand. It's in there pretty good. So the idea here is that we're going to want to get something on here and break it loose. So that's what we need to do on the inner. And I'm assuming that the one that is on the car is very much the same situation. So let's size this up. Just in case, I went and rented the inner tie rod tool from AutoZone. And just looking inside the box here, let me turn the tripod around so that we can open this box up. Just looking at what we have in here, I don't think any of these are going to fit, like, not even close. So this might be a crapshoot, but it looks like I could just get a wrench on here. This is a 19. So it looks like it's just going to be a 17 millimeter wrench. So I might not even need this. Let's see if we can get underneath the car and break this open with a wrench. So I got a different tool for the inner tie rods, and I have my doubts about this statement here. Maybe when this job is done, I can sue them for false advertising, because I don't expect this to be easy at all. Let's see just how easy this is. Easily turns. Makes it easy. So easy. I don't see how this could make it easy, because here's the thing. This is the ball joint. It's just gonna spin here. This is gonna be a disaster. This isn't gonna work at all. There's just no damn way. Come on. Come on. All right, so clearly it doesn't go there. So this is what happens when you take a team of engineers in the 80s, you give them a bunch of cocaine, and you have them design cars. Obviously, this is going to work, because why? Well, this was designed for tie rod ends, inner tie rod ends that, you know, make sense. See, for the inner tie rods that this was designed for, the outer body of the ball joint is the other way around. It screws directly into the rack itself. Now, Honda, the engineers at Honda, they all collectively did a line, and they said, nah, we're not going to do it like that. For the Prelude, we're going to turn it backwards. Why? So that we can have the ball joint turn the other way. I don't know why. Let's get in a little bit closer so you can see how they decided to solve the problems that they created with this design. So you see in here, we have an inner washer over the 17 millimeter that I'm supposed to actually remove. That washer was folded over, I guess because that was their way of ensuring that it didn't back itself out. Why would they do that? I don't know. But if they had just maybe, I don't know, consulted with a mechanic and said, hey, we've got this idea. Maybe the mechanic would have said, oh, dude, come on. What are you on? This is stupid. This is so stupid. So, good job, Honda. Real good job. There was no reason for you to design it this way, but you chose to design it this way anyway. And you're just lucky the rest of the car is really good. You're just lucky. Let's just say that. So I was also tempted to just cut this off with a Sawzall, but I fumbled the Sawzall with the blade on it, and yeah, did some more damage to my car. So that's great. That's just great. I'm not sure what the best approach here at this point is. I'm just going to get underneath the car. And I've got 3 different 17 millimeters. A stubby, a regular, and a long one. This was not easy because this washer was folded over so tightly it looked like it had been spot welded. In fact, the person that did it put some dents in the ball joint itself. So good on them. Real good job. Let's see. Now you tell I'm not going to get very far with this. I might have to remove the axle. Oh my god, the whole steering shaft is flexing when I do this. I'm going to ruin my car. I'm going to ruin it. What is this? Come on. We have the 2 tie rod ends side by side. Here's the old one. Got the big washer here, And then we got this stupid little thing that gets bent over the squared nut side. I don't know what it's called. Technical term, squared nut side thing. And we got the new one. So here's the weird thingy that gets bent over and into the nut squared thingy. And then the big washer. And we're just going to reassemble it exactly the way it came out. Wish me luck, I'm going to need it. I assume that the crushing the sides of the turn thingy helps make sure that this thing doesn't back out. I'm just not a big fan of this design in general. I don't know if you've noticed that or not. But just in case you haven't noticed, I'm not thrilled about what I'm doing right now. I'm not having fun, guys. Don't drop on my face. Don't drop on my face. Ow! Really? I just used a wrench! I am calling that. I am calling it right there. My God. That was tough. So I have the new inner tie rod on the car, but I am having a real hell of a time getting this boot to line up on that lip of the steering rack. Like, really, I am seriously having a bad time. In fact, I've spent probably a good 2 hours now fighting with this thing. So then I kind of realized, I mean, you see all this shit that's on my face, like, I'm underneath this car, my hair's getting caught in everything, just crap dripping out, falling into my eyes just nonstop, and that just kind of got me thinking. I realized that today I have spent at least half of the day pissed off working on this car. Like in a serious blood rage kind of pissed off. That's not healthy. That's not good. And then I kind of realized this job was not meant to be done on the car. Now, can you do it on the car? Sure. Are you going to tell me it's easy to do on the car? Probably. But again, you're a better mechanic than me. Okay? Let's just get that out of the way. You're a better mechanic than me. So I am having the worst time in the world. I am having an awful time. I want to burn my garage down with my car in it right now. I am seriously pissed off trying to get this thing back together. So then I started to think way back. Let's go back to like 2005. That's how far back I'm going. I converted this car from two-wheel steering to four-wheel steering. I have changed this rack out before. I have removed it, and I've installed a new one. And I don't remember being as pissed off at my car as I am right now. So then I just kind of realized this job was not meant to be done on the car. So I'm going to take the rack out. In fact, I could have spent this whole time that I was waiting on these stupid tie rod ends to pull the rack and do it in a couple hours, and I would have had it done today. But no, we're here now. So I'm just going to cut my losses. I'm going to pull the rack, and we're going to do it on my workbench. We're underneath the car now, and you can see I have already pulled the lines. I'm letting that all drip out you know, because there's like 50 gallons of power steering fluid in the system. And for some reason, there's 4 lines that connect into this rack. You would think there would only be, you know, an in and an out, but that's not how it works on Honda Preludes. There are 4 lines, and there's pretty much double of everything that you would think. There's 2 steering shafts. There's 4 lines going in and out. This is it's a lot easier than it looks, though, because once you disconnect those 4 lines, disconnect these 2 steering shafts. In fact, they're both going in the same direction, so it's not that bad. If I was able to do it 15, almost 20 years ago as a teenager with hand tools, I can do it now with all of my power tools and my big ass garage and, you know, a little bit more experience than I had back then. And after you pull those 2 steering racks, it's just that bracket and that bracket. So you just pull that, and then you can pull the rack out. You got another steering line here for some reason. Not sure what that's about, but that's pretty easy. Just pull that out. Oh yeah, that's the steering assist for the rear rack. That's what it is. And then you can just slide the rack out. So I've almost got the rack out, and we've got the rod on that side, the rack on that side. You can't look at this and tell me that this is good engineering. Every other car I've ever worked on, steering rack is much easier. It doesn't require taking everything off center, moving the rack all the way to one side, prying it out on the other side. It's all just so much easier. This is ridiculous. This is Prelude. So my conclusion is that replacing the inner tie rod boots was not meant to be done on the Prelude. It was meant to be done on a TR7. So now we have the rack off of the car, and this is just going to be so much better. Not only can I have an easier time getting this boot on, but I can clean all of this up. I can clean all of that up, and I will just have a much better time putting this back together because everything will be clean. I won't have shit falling on my face. This is just a really, really messy job anytime you have to take these lines apart. So you know, this is a real pain in the ass, but I'm going to feel better about this when the job is done. So it took me a half a day yesterday. It took me 10 minutes, including the time that it took for me to figure out that I should take this thing to my vise. It took me 10 minutes. So I am back in business. This is awesome. So now I can change this out, tighten the new one down, and crush it on the sides and do all of that stuff. And then I can clean this thing up. In fact, I'm just going to leave it right here, clean it up as good as I can before I flip it over, because this is in there really solid. It's not going anywhere, and I don't want to mess with that. Today I learned that there are 2 different sizes on this steering rack, because this doesn't even come close to fitting. I gotta say, I'm not even mad. Why am I not even mad? I mean, I'm pretty easily enraged, but I'm not even mad this time. Why? Because it's not in the car. I didn't struggle with it for an hour and a half before figuring out that this was the wrong size. So I've got the rack cleaned up. I went full toothbrush on it, which means obviously before Radwood, at the very least, I need to get my own collapsible lawn chair. Because now that I've gone full toothbrush on at least 2 car parts, I believe that is the requirement. Is that, correct me if I'm wrong. So you see here over on the passenger side, I still do not have the boot. However, according to Zach Phelps on the 3rd Gen Prelude Enthusiast Facebook group, a 94 Mustang GT steering rack bellows will fit here. So I went ahead and ordered that. It's going to come in tomorrow, and we'll see if that works. So if that works, huge thank you to Zach. And he says he's using it on his car, so hopefully that'll work for me as well. And so while I wait, I decided to do some cleaning, not only with the rack, but with the tools. I have picked up my tools, cleaned them off, and I have started to clean up, well, I mean, okay, I haven't cleaned the garage, but I have started to clean up the car. Let's go take a look at this. So you see here, it is I mean, I'm not going to say I went full toothbrush on the car, but I was definitely very, very much interested in mitigating the amount of crap that falls on my face while I'm underneath the car, because that got old really fast. Yeah, and that is the crap that I'm talking about falling on my face. Yeah, much like Pogs, Jeggings, and the Macarena, it got old really fast. I gotta say, between being able to clean all of this stuff and having the luxury of uh, being able to get up close and personal with this side of the rack and the amount of time that it took, I mean, I had this off swapped out in 5 minutes. Uh, Removing the rack was the best decision I made all weekend, because ever since I did that, everything got so much easier. So if you can do this on the car, congratulations. I'm really happy for you, but I chose not to, and I have no regrets. And so here's the rack all cleaned up and with the new boot on. The 94 Mustang boot did fit just fine, although the little port for air going transferring back and forth between the bellows didn't match up. I just used a breather adapter because that's the extent to which I care. I know the Prelude Power community talks about cutting that and putting a new breather thing in there. Whatever. You know, this is going to be under the car, and I'm not going to win any awards anyway. So I have way more vacuum hose than I need because, well, I needed to buy a new one. The old hose was just completely stiff. So I will plug that in once I get the rack up in the car, and then I just have to throw a zip tie on it. You see I have cleaned up the floor and then promptly got it dirty again. Not a big deal, I'll just clean it again. There's my sway bar all cleaned up and ready to go. And what else do I have? A bunch of miscellaneous parts. These are all the bolts and nuts and things that I took off of the car that hopefully it all makes its way back onto the car. Here I'm trying to connect the steering rack to the steering column. And guess what keeps happening? Yeah, that. I've ruined 2 bolts now, which means I get to drop the rack again in order to pull that stupid U-joint out and straighten out the threads. Yay me! This is fun. This is what I do for fun. What is wrong with me? So I got it all back together, but first I want to show you how I resolved the U-joint from the steering column to the steering rack. So I was having a bit of a trouble. First I removed this, and then I removed this vacuum hose here. And then I was able to get a little bit more room to get my hands in there. I've got average size hands, so I'm not a big guy, I'm not a small guy. So I was able to work that around. I was very concerned that I would have to remove the entire intake manifold, but I was able to make it work. However, I made a mistake in my first try. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that I can point and, oh my God, focus. All right, so you see that bolt there that connects, that's the bolt that connects to the steering column. I cinched that down first before putting in the bolt on the rack. That was a mistake because you see how on the right there, there's that flat plane? That is so that you can cinch down the bolt wherever it lands on the column. The steering rack side, the pinion, does not have that. It has a notch that is very specific in where that U-joint is supposed to connect. So when I cinched down the top bolt, I stripped out the bolt on the bottom and had to pull that U-joint off and repair the threads. So I pulled that U-joint off, repaired the threads, and everything went back together much easier because the second time around, I attached it to the pinion first, cinched that down, and then cinched down the bolt on the top. And of course, when I had to pull all that apart, I had to drop the rack. I didn't have to pull it out, but I had to drop the mounts on either side of the rack. So let's get underneath the car, and I've got some wins and failures to show you because things got a little bit fun. We are underneath the car, and the first thing I'm going to point out to you is the steering shaft to the rear rack. So the boot for this thing was just completely in half and just kind of hanging there. It wasn't really protecting from anything, and it was collecting a lot of rust. As you can see, I have taken the wire wheel to it. However, it is definitely unfinished. I'm going to revisit this when I pull the rear rack so that I can slip it backwards and have clearance to remove the U-joint. Once I remove the U-joint, then we're going to clean it with some science. We're going to use electrolysis first to clean the rust off. Then I'm going to get real detailed with cleaning it up and then re-grease it, paint it, and then put it back in. So hopefully it won't accumulate more rust in the future, or at least not as bad. So this was a dismal failure. You see these bolts here on the transmission mount, the rear engine mount bracket? Yeah, those bolts, I put them in finger tight when I worked on this car last. Remember when I did the intake manifold and all the motor mounts and stuff? Yeah, I put them in finger tight. So that was stupid. In fact, one of the bolts actually fell out. These two were just, you know, wiggling there. So I put some Loctite and I've cinched them all down. Obviously, I had to pull this one out of my box of spare nuts and bolts. You see here, the steering rack itself is nice and clean, so is the subframe and most of the hardware. It was much easier to work on without a whole bunch of crap falling on my face. You know, after a month of seeing it up on jack stands, it really does look good on the ground. I just got it on the ground, and I have tightened up the lug nuts. I did not forget to do that again. And you see here, I have the funnel stuck in the reservoir for the power steering fluid, and that's because I need to fill it and burp the system. So when you fill it from dry, you have to start the car up, run it, and turn the wheels back and forth like 30 times easily while you're checking the fluid and refilling it. And the idea is that you need to get the air circulating out of the system, because if there's air in the system will cavitate and it will blow seals in the rack and blow seals in the pump. It'll ruin the pump, actually, and it'll start making horrible, horrible noises like you hear from just about every single Ford vehicle. I guess I need to readjust those belts again. Let's shut off the battery charger. It's starting to smooth out. Yeah, it's getting better. Oh shit! Wow, that was unexpected. This has never happened to me before. Look at that. I have never had it happen like that before. That's interesting. So obviously there was a lot of air in the system, air in the rack probably, and it made its way up all at once. I thought I was done filling it up, but this air just, yeah, it's all foamy because of all the air in the system. Yeah, I'm gonna have a big mess to clean up. So I've cleaned up most of the mess. I'll get the rest later on, but for now, it might erupt again. So I pumped quite a bit of the fluid out of it. I wanted to keep the reservoir a little under half, and that way if I can see it start to rise, I can shut the car off. Let's give this another go. All right, well, I think that's good enough for now. We're going to do a more thorough shakedown after we get the rear done and everything all reconnected the way it's supposed to be. For now, all I need to be able to do is turn this thing around in the garage. I mean, obviously, I can't turn it around in the garage. I have to pull it out and then turn it around and bring it back in. So as you can see, I got the Prelude turned around. I went ahead and did that off camera because I had some things I needed to take care of. Namely, with the Miata, the oil change, I accidentally got the wrong filter. So, and because I've filled it with oil already, I own it. I guess that means I have to go get a car to fit this filter. Otherwise, that would be a waste of money, right? That's how that works, right? Right? So we're going to go ahead and call that a video. I'm really happy with the progress, even though it is very slow going. First, it was slow going because I was waiting on parts, and then the past week it's actually been slow going because of my day job. I've got a really exciting project that I have been putting a lot of extra time in, and it has really taken the energy away that I really needed to get things done on this car. So it really has been, instead of being able to turn wrenches for, you know, a couple hours after work, it has really been maybe a half hour after work, and then you know, during the weekends. So this has really just been slow going, but at the same time I'm trying to keep a relaxed pace. I'm trying to have fun here. I am not trying to turn a car around. I'm not trying to flip it. I'm not a professional mechanic by any means, as you can see from all the failures. I'm definitely not a professional mechanic, but I am really trying hard to have fun and really to try to manage stress. And on a car like this, that is a real challenge because this is a stressful car to work on just by its very nature. So what's next for this car? Well, since I've done the front, I have the bushings for the rear. We're going to do the rear. And then we're going to, once we've done the rear bushings and all of the ball joints and the wheel bearings and tie rod ends, because this car has rear tie rods, we are going to then do a four-wheel close enough alignment. We're also going to adjust the height of this car. Because when I was pulling it out and turning it around, there were some pretty obnoxious noises coming out of the front, lots of popping, and I think that's just from the suspension settling for the first time. But I really want to not only get the wheels straight-ish, but because they're all four of them going to be pointing in different directions. I want to get them straight-ish, but I also want to make sure that I've tightened everything down. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. It's been a long one, but it's all worth it, and it's actually a lot of fun, and this is really a fantastic car at the end of the day. Even with all of its trouble, even though it's a total pain in the ass to work on, it is still 1000% worth it, and I am so happy that I did all of this work. Thank you so much. If you like what you see, like, share, subscribe, comment. And if you don't like what you see, maybe you think Preludes are really easy to work on. If that's you, I'm happy for you. Really, I am. You're a better mechanic than me. You're smarter than me. You are way more patient than me, that's for sure. Either way, let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.